Testing, check, check, 1, 2, 3. Testing, check, check. Testing, check, check, 1, 2, 3. Hello, welcome to Ninja Robot Studio LLC stream, where I play video games and VR experiences and talk through them from a UX designer's perspective. Game development has a heavy indirect influence on VR development and XR development, so it makes sense that we would study game design to learn how to create better immersive experiences. And how this is set up is I will go by genre. So I started with tabletop RPGs, and I've already written up a report on that, on what we found from that based on the research. What this is kind of like is competitive landscaping. So in UX design, the UX process has a lot of different elements to it. It's not just about visual design. It's about making sure that the thing is working for the humans that you're designing it for. You're studying the humans that you're designing it for, and then you're making sure the thing works for those humans or animals if your target audience is an animal. But in this case, we're dealing with humans, and there's a long process to that. But this is just one step in that process or methodology in order to create great experiences. And what we do here on the stream is, with people participating in the chat live, is we will go through a video game and talk about it from that UX perspective. And that is what is called, in that process, once we've got our initial research done with the target audience, our initial generative research to understand the problem that we're trying to solve, the designer will then often do what's called competitive landscaping. And that's where you will look at how other people have solved the problem to see what can we learn from that, what works from that, what doesn't work from that, what gaps could we fill in with our experience to make that better. And so that's the approach that the stream takes, is that competitive landscaping. And so we started with tabletop RPGs, and you can see that report out. I did a talk on that. You can see all of that stuff on my website, and I will include all of those links in the show notes as well for those that are watching this later. But started with tabletop RPGs, and now we did platformers, and I walked through that process of doing the synthesis for platformers, and y'all can watch that as well. on the videos on demand on YouTube, because they're probably not up. They're not up on Twitch anymore because they only stay for a couple weeks on Twitch. But you can check out the YouTube channel to watch those on demand. I've got everything in playlists by genre and so forth. And now we have been doing training simulations for the past few weeks, couple months. And now we finished playing those games, and now we are going to do our synthesis on that. So what we do at the end of every stream, playing through each game, we'll do a Rose, Thorn, Bud exercise where we talk about what went well, what was a highlight, what did we like, and we base all of this analysis on UX, best practices, and the pillars of gaming UX. And since we're now doing training, we also include the best practices for training, which I could bring up real quick and share that link as well. I will also share it in the show notes. But there's the best practices for training, and I wrote this based on experience and research that I've done with people on training sims in actual usability testing. So that's where I come from, is from the training. Creating the training simulations for safety consequences, and that's where I've acquired all of the knowledge that I have about training in VR. And so we base all of these Rose, Thorn, Bud exercises on this knowledge of the training pillars of gaming UX, and you can watch. We don't have time to really go into detail on that, but you can watch the video. Share that as well. To get a deeper look at what the pillars of gaming UX are and what they mean. But so what was a highlight? What went well? What did you like? What didn't go well? What was a low point? What did you not like? And what opportunities do you see? What would you do differently next time? And what questions do you have? So the roses are the things that were good, because we always want to remember the things that are good, because we want to learn from that. And we also want to make sure that we are not forgetting that, so that in our process of fixing all of the things that aren't working, we don't inevitably remove the things that are. So we want to make sure that we keep track of what's good. And then definitively, we've got distinct categories here. This is what's working. This is what's not working. Here's what we're going to do about it. And ideally, every thorn has at least one bud. You can have more buds than thorns. That's fine. But there needs to be at least one bud per thorn, because we're not just here to vent. We're here to make it better. And so that's why we want to make sure that we are addressing all of these thorns. And we may not know exactly what we're going to do, and we most likely don't know what exactly we're going to do unless it's just a blatant best practice. Okay, just do that. We don't always know the solution, so we can just say, okay, we're going to investigate this thing. We're going to follow up on this thing. We're going to look into this. We're going to do a little bit of research with our target audience on this one, because we need to validate whatever it is. So that all of that would go in the buds column, all of those next steps, so that we have a definitive list. Okay, here's our action plan for the things that aren't working, and here's the things that are working that we're going to try to make sure stay, or that we're going to learn from. And so then we've got one of these, and then after that we'll go through thinking about, if we were to translate this particular game into XR, what would we have to think about? And so that is what we do every week or every stream, and then we've done that for each game that we've done. And so now we are doing synthesis on the training sims. And this is where I'm going to take Okay, this is where I'm gonna take, I need to change that. Everything that, because there are some standout issues. I'm gonna add standout. And I'll explain that in a second. I just noticed that I needed to add that. It's something that I added last time. Something new. Okay, I need to unlock this. So okay, and then for the purposes of the report, we are, and you can see an example of one of the other reports that I've done on my website. Let me find it. Where did I put that? Where would I have put that? I'll just search it. So I've got a video and a article. So this would be an example of a report out. This is an example of one that I would do just to a written report. And then this is an example of what that would look like if I were sharing that out with a team. So be sure to check those out, and I'll try to also remember to put those in the show notes. I'll just leave it open so that hopefully I remember. But that's an example of what a report out could look like for this type of research. And so that's what we're going to do again, only this time we're going to do it with training sims. And what's going to come out of this, that's another one of the reasons that I like doing it with Post-its, is that you have a short, concise notes. You don't have a dissertation going on here. A lot of people like to go straight to dissertation. That's something that researchers like to do, is just go straight to the report and straight to the dissertation. But doing it this way lets you take this information. It's already organized and easy to digest. You can take this information and then convert it into different formats. So like what I did with those two, I did a video and I did a report. So you can take this information in its form right here and convert it to whatever. You can write your reports based on this, but then this lets you do an infographic. It lets you do whatever because it's short, concise, and clear, and you're not having to dig through all of the words of a dissertation report to get that information, because here it is right in front of you visually. And that's just a efficiency time saver, and also it gets you the clear points very quickly, easily categorized without having to read a long report. And one of the things about the report that you would notice is that it is much more detailed. So, but it cross-references like crazy all of the different things that you would need to learn to know more about this best practice or so forth. So like if they are like sound effects effectively create mood, for example. And here is where you can learn more about the best practices around creating sound effects and lighting and visuals and so forth, and how that applies. So that's one thing about the report, is that it would reference you to things to learn more, whereas the video is just talking about all of that in a report out the fashion like you would do for a team. And then so we're talking about this is just synthesizing what we would need to think about for XR specifically, since a lot of these things that we are now analyzing are not XR. Like this Rover Mechanic Simulator game was not an XR game, it's a 2D game. So then what would we need to think about if we translated that to XR? What are the best practices? And now learn those best practices. So that's the idea with the report. Because it's an educational report. I like to make my reports educational so that teams can learn while they can learn more about best practices and how to do things more effectively while they're learning what are the issues. So here's how we can make things better, and educating them on how can we make things better. Besides just throwing them in, it's kind of like, let me think of a comparison. It's, well, yeah, okay. You can just give people fish, or you can teach them to fish, and this is like teaching them to fish. And if give a fish they eat for a day, teach them the fish they eat for a lifetime. It's kind of a overdone analogy, I guess, but it's basically that. I'm teaching them so that they can go make better stuff. Even though it kind of like I think it's probably one of the goals of somebody that is a teacher is to like teach themselves out of a job. So you can go be the designer and do this. I'm not gonna live forever. You can go do this. You can do this too. Don't put it all on. It's like, it's a scarcity thing. Fishing analogy is a good one. Hi, Mazilius. How are you doing? How's your day? I feel like it's an overdone one just because I've heard it my whole life. So I don't know how many other people have heard it, but I feel like it's overdone in my own life anyway. Okay, so now we're synthesizing. So basically what we're doing is, yeah, Thursday. That's good. Is we're doing synthesis on this. So I go by overarching things that work across all of them, and then what are some standouts that an individual game did. And then same thing with issues. What were the overarching issues that I saw across all of them versus what's an individual issue that stood out that we still want to make sure that we're learning from. And then here are the recommendations for all of that based on all that. And this is going to take time. Last time, I think it took 3 streams to do all of this. So I'm just doing the synthesis live, and we'll see how long it takes. High fructose caffeine. Okay. That is always helpful. I'm doing the bean style. Okay. This was, I don't remember seeing this anywhere else. This was a standout from Rover Mechanic Simulator. And yay, there's a train. I don't know if you can hear it. Rover Mechanic Simulator. You can pick skill learning paths, and I really liked that concept. I don't know if you've seen that one. Were you able to hear it? I don't know if you've seen this one, the Rover Mechanic Simulator that I went through, but it is worth going to check out that skill learning path feature, because it's, if you're creating training sims, I really like that concept. This is a game, of course, and you can choose which path, what kind of career path you want to go down, and that would be very useful in training, depending on what it is you're doing, of course. But you would let them choose their career path and then go try this thing out and like learn what you need to learn to go down that career path. I think it's pretty a good thing to glean from it. So that was a standout. And I believe that all of them had adjustable audio settings. You know what? I don't think First Steps and First Contact did. No, they didn't, because they were pretty early. There aren't any like settings options that I'm aware of in those. Wrench does have settings. These do, but First Steps and First Contact did not. Okay. So the majority did. But, and then I'll just make the note that those two did not. Do I? So if so you're watching the stream. So if you scroll down on the about section on the Twitch page, you'll see I have a list of all the games that we played, and I should have it on there. I think I've been keeping it up to date, but I should have it on there, and it's a direct link to that YouTube video if you wanted to save that for later. That is a direct link there. I think it's up to date. So I'm trying to keep an up-to-date list of all the games I've played so people can go check. So adjustable audio settings, those are a good thing. Assembly and disassembly of screws and parts is not cumbersome. It's automatic. Well, it didn't apply to those because that's not what they were doing, but it did apply to these. Where relevant, yeah. So that was an overarching thing. So that was a good thing. That's overarching. Linux on Mars, that was fun. So yeah, they had a Linux console in their Mars station. So that was fun. That is just a fun little. It's just a fun little thing for nostalgia for people who like or you have used Linux. I've made a Linux machine before. I took an old Windows netbook, you know, back around 2008, 2007, there was these popular little $300 computers. They were called netbooks, and they were just really cheap computers that ran Windows Lite. And I took one of those, and it was running, even with Windows Lite, it was running like a snail. It was so slow. And I wiped it and then made it a Linux machine, and it was awesome. It was awesome. And then I used that to do all my homework because I went back to college around that time to get my degree finally, because I didn't get my degree when I was younger. I went back later and got it. And I used that for my homework for all my writing, for my writing classes and stuff. It was awesome. Great machine. I sold it. I sold it for $50. It's worth it if you ever have the money to make one. That was not a return on investment, but I was done using it by then. I got my money's worth out of using it for college homework, so it was great. So Linux. That is... So I would say that is something that is more of a... I'm going to clarify that. Easter eggs and nostalgia. So this one would be Mars Rover Mechanic. And first steps, first contact, had these are just things that bring delight. They're not necessary at all. They just bring delight and make it more enjoyable. First contact, 80s toys and tech from First Contact. So the objective list is easily accessible. So let me think. Is that something that was overarching across all of them? Car Mechanic Simulator. You had your little list to the side that showed you your next step. Wrench kept it up, and if you were in game, it kept it on the tablet for you. First steps, it just told you. So that is, I would say that's an overarching thing. Yeah. You can tell me if you disagree. Did you see, how far into this did you start watching? Was it the wrench games that you started watching it? Or did you see like Car Mechanic Simulator, Rover Mechanic? You didn't see Rover Mechanic, but you see the Car Mechanic one? That one was fun. I kind of want to go back and play that one sometime because my dad was a mechanic and I've always wanted to go learn how to do that, but he wouldn't let me. But I want to. Protecting the little girl from all the heavy machinery, I'm sure. So wayfindings provided to the different areas during the tutorial. Yes. It wasn't really relevant in First Steps First Contact because you stayed still. But in these games, it did give you wayfinding. So that's an overarching thing that worked. And you are able to go at your own pace. So let's think. Yes, with Rover. Yep. With Wrench. For Steps, you could... Yeah, you could go at your own pace on all of these. The thing that you're not gonna notice in the streams is that I didn't like take my time on any of it. I just went through it, especially on the last two. They're very short because I have done that. So Car Mechanic VR and then Wrench VR one. The Car Mechanic one's actually a 2D game, but they did a great job on it. It's just a game. Yeah, that one, there's some good things to learn from that one, Car Mechanic. Hovering over a part gives information on the condition. That was a standout feature. I don't think Wrench did that. Wasn't relevant to the other two. Car Mechanic Simulator didn't do that. You had to go into a menu to do it. So then... That was a standout from Rover Mechanic. And so this is another good thing about using Post-its is that I can just take these Post-its and then categorize them however I want and group them together. And so I did, so it was Wrench on computer and Wrench VR. And then Car Mechanic Simulator was the one I did before Wrench. And then before that I did Rover, Mars Rover, which is awesome. They've got a free demo. I don't know if Wrench still has a free demo, but I know that Rover and Car Mechanic did, at least at the time that I did them. If you want to go check those out, you can look for the free demo. I did them on Steam. I like the Rover one. It made me want to pull out all my robotics equipment that is currently in storage in another town and build another robot, which I haven't done in forever. But it's all in storage. So for the Thorns from Rover Mechanic Simulator, we're just going to systematically go through each game. I have built basic robots. Very basic robots. Not like... I don't have like electrical engineering knowledge, so I would probably... If I try to do anything really complicated, I would probably set things on fire, like my friend who has done. Yeah, I can just do the basic stuff with the Arduino. I like Arduino stuff. But it did help with the Rover Mechanic Simulator. So Thorns for Rover Mechanic Simulator. During the tutorial, you can't practice while reading the tutorial panel. Did that happen in any of the other ones? No. I don't think that happened in any of the other ones. So that would have been a standout issue. Okay. And then, yeah, I enjoyed it. I would lose track of time trying to build it was tutorials that I would go through, so somebody just gives you the instructions. My favorite part was the assembly. I didn't as much enjoy the coding part as I did the assembly part of the actual robot, like wiring it and all that. Because then I learned how to solder and all that stuff. That part I enjoyed, the actual making it. Then the coding was less enjoyable because I'm just not a fan of coding. The tutorial, assuming that I remember what I learned instead of just reminding me. What's in the prelim? Okay, yeah, that was another standout issue that we need to learn from. So I'm gonna put it here under Rover Mechanic Simulator. Here, let me do this so I'm not losing track of what's what. And not letting me initiate the pop-up panels when approaching a new area to learn. It was auto popping up stuff, which was really annoying. Because anytime I would approach a new area where I was supposed to be doing something, while I was walking towards it, the whole screen would be taken up by this pop-up. And so it was just in proximity, so I wouldn't even know if I was standing in front of the right area. I was just in that area. And so then there would be like multiple things in that area, and I wouldn't know which one it was because it popped it up before I got there. So that was frustrating. And that's not conducive to learning when you don't even know which thing it's talking about. That was a standout thing because Car Mechanic Simulator did it the right way. And I need to give that clarity though that would just be in the vicinity. So, okay, we're doing present tense. You can't tell which equipment is being covered because there's like more than one piece of equipment in the same area, so I wouldn't know. So that didn't help my learning. So the information architecture in the tutorial says the tasks when the actual tab says objectives. So the IA is not matching. That's an important thing because that can be confusing. This was not something I noticed in any of the other games. So even though, I really like Rover Mechanic Simulator. It's pretty cool, and I would want to continue playing it if I had the money to buy the game. I don't know how much it costs. I didn't look. But as you can see, I play a ton of games, so I need to not spend my entire income on games. So, yeah, make sure that the IA isn't, because these things are not conducive to learning. Well, yeah, so none of these things are conducive to learning. Yeah, so diamonds, so those were the wayfinding diamonds, are not enough contrast against the background in the workshop. So instead of glowing object, information architecture. IA is information architecture. Do you know what that is? So did anyone else have diamonds or anything? Nope. Okay. So I'm gonna clarify wayfinding. So, because they had diamonds as the marker for where you go for things, and they were also colors. Colors were being used as the sole source of information, and this was something that was only an issue in this game. For red and green, and so that's especially an issue that they were only using red and green, and it was the only source of information. Meaning that if someone has red-green color blindness, which is the most common form of color blindness, they wouldn't be able to tell what was going on because there's not enough contrast between those two colors to know. So it's not a good practice to only use color as a source of information. You always accompany with labels. One of the annoying things about Miro is that I keep accidentally clicking things because of the way they like set the pop-ups, and sometimes they'll be right under your red and green should never be seen. Except at Christmas time. So it's not clear when 3D printing begins based on the interaction in the panel. I almost accidentally printed 2 wheels instead of 1, and that would have been not enough resources to print 2. So there weren't enough resources to print 2, so that's why that's the only thing that kept me from accidentally printing 2, which would be a important thing if you're on a screen. Yeah. Yeah. Not enough resources to print. And when you're in an environment where you have, like Mars, where you have so many, you only have so many resources, and it's not easy to get more resources, you really need to be careful with your usage. So having an interaction having unclear feedback that keeps you from being able to know that this thing has already happened, and it was because of the panel. In real life, it wouldn't have been an issue because in real life, unless they're using augmented or mixed reality, they wouldn't have a panel blocking their view. So it wouldn't have been as big a deal in real life. But we are talking about training sims. There's a lot of issues with Mars Rover. So it doesn't teach you what's wrong with the wheel, only that it needs to be replaced. So that is is that an overarching thing? Yes. So were any other panels getting in the way in any of the games? I don't think so. Colors weren't as much of an issue in the other games, I don't think. See, I don't think it was an issue in this one. No. A lot of this is me going off memory too, because I played them all. Doesn't teach what's wrong with the wheel. That was an overarching thing, so it's not teaching you the whys. It's only teaching what, not why. That was an overarching thing. And then doesn't teach you why you need to reset the ECU after repair, so that flies in with that. It's not teaching you the whys. So you have to switch to different modes for assembly, repair, etc. That is cumbersome. Yeah, I did. And you don't have to do that with any of the other ones. That was frustrating. You have to switch to a different mode. And that was their way of handling the issues with the UI, is that you would have to switch to an edit mode, like an assembly mode versus a repair mode versus something, which in real life you wouldn't have to do. So it's not a great solution for if you were training someone on this thing. And again, as a game, it was still cumbersome even as a game. But the goal of the game isn't so much to teach you how to do this thing as it is to like be entertained and learn more about like life on Mars. If there were to be like a colony or something there. So a lot of auto panning instead of letting the player control that. That happened in Car Mechanic Simulator and Wrench. So I'll write that here. No, and Rover had a lot of auto panning. They both did that. Panning and zooming, and that is less of an issue in a video game as it is in it was actually still kind of annoying in the video game too. But definitely not something you want to do in VR. There are other ways to do it. Okay, so now let's look at buds. Let the players access the thing that they're learning as a reference while reading the tutorial panel. And that is I'm going to change the type of line. And then the tutorial's assuming a bunch of stuff. Change that line. Just remind them in context. So this is going to be a long report again. Give player control over all the steps. That's still what you would do here. And then make sure that the information architecture is consistent. My assumption here is that they made an update somewhere in one or one or the other place, and they didn't double check that affected anything else. Like whenever making changes. Double check that. So make it focused and step by step on the diamonds. They were everywhere. Okay, yeah, they were everywhere, and you could see all of them at once, and there wasn't enough contrast. So that actually, I missed a bud. I'll go ahead and add it. Glowing outlines are a good contrast from the environment in general. You'll see a lot of games do that. And make it step by step. And then you want to use enough color contrast for distinction for color blindness, and accompany your colors with labels. That is for red and green. And use checkboxes instead of diamonds for the completion list. So yeah, that was another thing that they did that wasn't clear. Oh yeah, they had red and green diamonds in the checklist instead of just using checkboxes. And always accompany with labels. And okay, so I'm trying to see what the context was here of this complaint. Was these parts, when you just look at them, they were color coded, like red, green, orange, whatever, and you would have to hover over it for more. So if you had color blindness, you would have to hover over it to see what the status was. So something that they could have done was to add a little label and say this is such and such, and that would have, or used enough color contrast so that there was a difference, so that to make sure that they could still tell the difference in the different shades of gray or whatever that they're seeing, brown, instead of having to hover over each time to see the condition if they were colorblind. That's what was happening. And then, let's see, you want to give clear feedback on the panel that of success or failure. And then it doesn't teach what's wrong with the wheel, only that it needs replacement. And that was the only teaching what, not why. So I think I'm going to because I need to connect that some way. How am I going to do that visually? You need to, when you're training someone for real life, you need to teach why, not just what, so they can understand. Because we have a bad habit of not wanting to take the time to teach people whys. So then they just look at things like rules that they have to follow, and they don't understand why they have to follow those rules, which then makes it more likely for them to not do that because they don't know why. And then they have to learn the hard way why. Let me see. I think I'll just put it here for now, and then we'll figure it out later. Because I can see that's going to get messy later. Okay. And then that is with that, not the whys. I have to switch to different modes, explore other ways to do that. And so this is what I was talking about with next steps, is I'm not telling you the solution here. I'm just saying, look into this and figure out if there's another way of doing that without having to go into the different modes. So I'm not automatically just saying, do it exactly this way. Just go explore that and see if there's some other way. So that gives freedom to the designer, whoever's designing this, to come up, the team is to come up with a more creative solution than what I may be able to come up with. And then make sure that people have control of the camera always, especially in VR, because that can make people sick. And then this is just I'm going to just keep this one here because that is something that I really like about that game, is that concept of learning paths for skill paths for if you're like teaching someone who wants to go down a certain career track. Who like in the game, it was somebody who was, their specialization was gathering resources versus someone whose specialization was actually doing repairs on the robots, versus, so you could go and go down these different little career skill paths once you got into the game, which was pretty cool. I like that concept for training. And now, let's see. Of course, always understand the best practices for training in XR, step-by-step tutorials. I'm wondering if I had to leave early on this one to go, because I was having to do that a lot at that point. Promotes teamwork. On which part? The different skill paths. Yeah, you could learn how all the skills fit together, how the teams fit together as well. Yeah. Also help teams, people know how the team members contribute to the whole. That's a valuable thing. Yeah. The demo wasn't. I don't know if the actual game is. Demo wasn't. I don't think, because all I did was the tutorial. I didn't go any further. And my music stopped. Oh, okay. They suddenly changed track. Because I was just doing the tutorial on the free demo. Okay. And that is it from Rover Mechanic Simulator. So now we move on to Car Mechanic Simulator. See, in the environment starts, this was something that I really liked about Car Mechanic Simulator. Okay, here. I need to do the same thing here that I did on... Oh, wait, that was not... Okay, yeah, that's a separate thing. Let me make sure that's... This one's gonna move though. Okay. Now, the environment starts with the objects white. This was something really cool that I liked about Car Mechanic Simulator. Is that because you know how I think we've talked about it before, the environment whenever someone first gets into VR can be very overwhelming because of how cool it is. There's this awe factor, and that awe factor can distract you, especially if you've got this full colored world. So one of the things, and whenever someone's going into a training sim, they're expected to deal with this awe factor plus also learn something. And usually they're on work time, and so they have to focus on working and not playing. So the way Car Mechanic Simulator starts out their game is that the entire workshop is white except for the objects that you need to learn, which is pretty cool. I would take it a step further and say that it only the object that you need to work with at this particular moment is the thing that's white, as is the thing that's in full color, and then as you go through and start working on the different things, they start adding color to those things. So slowly you're starting to get a more colored workshop. So then that's helping get over that off factor, and then it's also helping you reinforce the focus of what it is am I supposed to be focusing on at this point. Which I think is an awesome pattern that could be used for training, for helping people focus. Okay. Starts with the phone highlighted as the first step. Let's think about this. So each of the games, all of the games do that. I think all the games do that. They have some kind of visual indicator of where to start. So let's see. Assembly, disassembly, screws and parts, not cumbersome. So yeah, it highlights first step in process, or the first step in the training, what they're supposed to focus on. Highlights what you're supposed to focus on next. Did I already say that? Let's see. Kind of goes with that, but they are still kind of separate. Okay. The task goal list stays in the top left corner. Let's see, did I make that an overall thing with that you objective list easily accessible? Yeah. Tooltips show when hovering over objects. That did happen in Car Mechanic Simulator. I would have to... Tooltips did work in First Steps. Only to a certain degree. They went away after you successfully completed it once. So it's not an overarching thing. Headphones are hurting my ears. So that would be something I would want to follow up on, I think. I'm gonna make a follow up column. Yeah, wrong thing. Here. Tooltips. Does this happen? Is this overarching? So I'm just gonna... It's gonna be a follow-up. Because I know that it happens in Car Mechanic Simulator, but I don't know to what degree it happens in the other ones, so I'm gonna have to follow up on all of them. And so how I would do that is move this over more, because I'm just going to make a note of that, and then I will probably have a stream where I just go in and follow up on everything. Is I would write out, okay, which games do I need to double check? So Rover Mechanic Simulator, Car Mechanic Simulator, Wrench, Wrench VR, First Step, First Contact, and then Car Mechanic Simulator was a yes. That one's done. And then I would just have to go double check on the other ones. And this will go here because that's answering that question. And so now we're gonna start a grid of follow-up so we can see, is this overarching or is it just a standout thing? Because I don't remember. And okay, tooltips, disabling menu items that aren't relevant to the tutorial, only focusing on things learning that happened in with the tooltip or the buttons and the tooltips in First Steps. You weren't seeing your controllers in First Contact. It would highlight what was actually happening. Rover Mechanic Simulator, I don't remember. So this would be another thing that I would follow up on, because I didn't make notes of it. Shows you how to change the torque, gives you options switching manual versus auto. Options, shows you how to access reference information. Gives visual and audio feedback. Let's see. Good feedback. First Steps did that with the buttons. That might be a standout thing, but I'm going to do a follow-up on that. And I'm color coding it, making it green because I want to, because again, buds are things that we're our next steps. So one of my next steps is to follow up on these things. I would most likely, because it is quite the challenge to like do the VR headset, but these are all in, because especially if I'm having to use different VR headsets depending on the game, but all of these I used the Quest on, so I might be able to just do the follow-up. It'll either be 1 or 2 sessions though, because like the VR setup is its own thing, so I might just do desktop and then VR, like 2 separate streams to follow up on that stuff. And I've done like for competitive analysis for features to see what has what feature. I've actually done way more in depth than this. Actually, if it was something I was analyzing for, does this application have these features? I would make a grid and kind of do what I'm doing here, only it would be like a feature. So a feature analysis. So does this competitor have this feature? Yes, no. And so it would be a grid of that. I've done some pretty in-depth grids on that in the past. So a lot happens before you actually design the thing. Disabling menu items that aren't relevant to the tutorial, so we're following up on that thing. Automatically animating the steps not relevant. Good informative feedback on the buttons disabled for steps already taken. For example, the balance wheel option, when I clicked on it the second time, it said it's already balanced, which would have been a good solution for Rover Mechanic Simulator when I almost accidentally printed the wheels twice. Is you've already printed a wheel, do you want to print another wheel? Or select the quantity of how many you want printed ahead of time. That's actually something you would, that would be a bud. Like maybe consider entering quantity or a confirmation. Do you want to print another one or something? There could be multiple things done there. So that was actually something I only saw in that one. So that is a standout. You already did this. You don't have to do it again. Okay. Automatically animating the steps not relevant to learning, like adding the nut. So I think I have that. Let's see. Yeah. Auto animated. And there is a opposite side to that though. That is going to come up when we get to wrench. About like torque and I think it actually came up here as well, about torque and about reverse threads on certain parts, certain types of parts. Because like on your bike, whenever you ride a bike, if you've ever repaired your bike, on the pedals, at least on the old school bikes, where you have to push the pedals back to brake, there's a reverse thread, because I don't know about the new bikes. I've only had the old ones. There's a reverse thread on the pedal so that when you're pedaling, it doesn't automatically come unscrewed. So there's there are different ones you need to use depending on which way the thing is rotating, so that it doesn't just come unscrewed while it's rotating. But they don't teach that. They're not teaching that. But wrench does teach about torque, which is important as well. But yeah, so that does come up. It does not come up on Mars Rover, so that's a standout thing. Okay, so controller tooltips are only Xbox, even though it supports PS4. That was not an overarching thing because first steps and first contact were made for a specific platform. So of course, and it's only available on a specific platform, so that is not an issue for them. Wrench is available on multiple platforms, and they have support for multiple controllers. I do not have enough different headsets to test how they handle the tooltips for each of those controllers, so I can't say whether or not they do support correctly. I could follow up and see in their menu options what they have for settings, unless I already complained about it. Let's see. Yeah, there's the torque station. But it's not teaching them torque, it's just assuming they have that background knowledge on it. Which I don't fully. I don't know why it matters, I just know it matters. It didn't teach me the why. So no, I don't even mention it in here. So I'm gonna have to, that would be a follow-up then. So. Then I'm gonna controller tooltips support different controllers or are relevant to. And on Car Mechanic Simulator, that is a no. So wait, so disabling menu items, so that's a yes. Okay. This is where I got that one. Okay. Right? Yeah. That's a follow-up. Doesn't include safety training. For example, car lift safety. Let's see. This isn't teaching... It's not teaching any kind of safety on anything in here either. Oh, you know what? I don't even think it like mentioned grounding. Like whenever you're working on, I don't know if you've ever worked on a PC or anything. I've built a PC from scratch back in the 90s. I couldn't do it. I mean, I could do it again with YouTube, but back in the 90s, and so we had to learn you have to ground your you ground yourself on metal or something before you touch the computer components or robotic components or anything, because you know, sometimes when you'll touch metal and it'll shock, that could ruin the components, and it didn't teach that here. It didn't teach that on here, so it's not teaching safety. Did it teach safety in wrench? I don't think so. I don't think it did. It didn't teach. Not relevant to first steps, first contact. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, so it's not like teaching you safety. That's an overarching thing. Doesn't include safety training. And then I will just add that as a example. Or another example would be grounding before touching electronic components. Didn't teach that. Yeah. And it's not covering some of the basic issues that you would need to go over for newbies. And if this were training, you would want to do that unless you have different levels of like review versus brand new and so forth. You would want to that's why you want to make sure that you know who is my target audience for this training. Is it someone who is brand new to this thing, completely brand new to this thing, or do they have any kind of background knowledge? If they do, what kind of background knowledge should they have before they take this training? And design your training for that. So make sure you know your target audience. Did I say that? Because I need to say that. Yeah, don't take for granted that everyone knows what you know. And I also need to add, make sure you know your target audience for the thing you're designing. So they're not covering basic things. Doesn't include importance of not overstripping the wheel nuts with a pneumatic wrench. It's not covering the concepts of normal and reverse threads for pivoted components. That's what I was talking about earlier. Is that overarching or... That is an overarching thing for the ones that teach that. The first steps in first contact These, it's not relevant to first as first contact because it's not relevant to. So not covering some of the basic issues. This is so then I might have to, in my report, make some kind of caveat about, okay, these were about a certain kind of training, these were a different type of training, so, and then separate them out. What did I learn? I'll have to figure that out once I get to the report, because we want to, because there's 2 different types of training going on here that we looked at, so I may need to, let's see if I can add a note about that. Separate the learnings, some of them. Types of training. I'm gonna change this so that I know that it's just a note for me. What color do I want? Okay. And then, like, e.g., the mech training versus interaction training. Okay. It's first steps, first contact, or teaching you interactions. And then mechanic simulator and car mechanic, all these simulators, and they're all about mechanics, are teaching you something else. So I may have to like distinguish that in my report when I get to that stage. And that's part of the benefit of doing the synthesis like this, is that I see that now. That I wasn't making that connection before, but now I'm seeing that as I go through and do the synthesis, that yeah, maybe I need to do some more distinction once I get to that report. Or however, assuming that there's going to be a report, but it may be I'm not sure yet how I'm going to make the output. We'll have to see. Assuming a report or a video or something, or both. That's what I did last time. But we'll see, because I already have some content on training. So I may decide I need to do like 2 separate articles or something. I'm not sure. I will have to see. I'll decide later. So not covering some of the basic issues. So this is for car mechanics simulator, and actually it happens in wrench, and it happens in all of them, so that's, yeah, okay. Iterating and yes, actually, yeah, I do that all the time. I'm constantly rethinking how I do things, just to how to make it better for myself. Yeah. Skipping important steps that you're supposed to be training on. I don't know about Rover Mechanic Simulator, but I know for Car Mechanic Simulator, because I used to watch my dad as a mechanic, there are things I know that I wouldn't know about Rover Mechanic Simulator. Specifically, did I, let's see, complain about anything there? Or I at least didn't add it to the post-its. that could have said something in the video, but just didn't add the post-it. So that's another thing. Like, if I had the time to go in and scrub the videos and see what all I commented on, then this report would be even more in-depth. But I don't really have the time to do that, so it's just that's why Rose Thornfed is just what are the things that stood out the most. So it's not, you have to choose whenever you're doing your research and your work in real life is how much in-depth, because you could go into the weeds so much that it's like analysis paralysis. You never get anywhere because you're spending so much time on analysis that you have to like balance that. And that's something you learn over time, is like with experience, I guess, is how do you balance that? Because you could spend all of your time doing research and not actually doing anything with it. And the part of the reason that I'm doing this research is to teach, so y'all are learning the process, but it's also helping me to learn as well, so that my own knowledge, and then my output of this will be more educational content for everyone, including myself, because I refer back to what I write to, because I forget as well. Humans, brains, finite. Skipping important steps that you're supposed to be training on. Was that something that... I'm assuming all of them did this. I don't know enough about Rover Mechanics Simulator. I don't know enough about Rovers to know, but I'm assuming it did. Wrench. The training in Wrench was a beautiful mess, really. So... I'm sure they skip steps. I'm sure they did. So I think that is an overarching issue. So yeah, the one that I called out was they were teaching you how to change the oil in Car Mechanics Simulator, but they didn't show you where to find the cap to remove the old oil, and they didn't teach you the importance of making sure that you actually put that cap on once you're done removing the oil, so that the new oil doesn't just pour right back out. It doesn't teach you that. A pug or hairless cat, so ugly it's cute. Yeah. 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 That's funny. Camera is auto panning and zooming to view parts up close. I think I already mentioned that somewhere. Wrench does not do that. So it's only Rover and Mechanic. And did I put that in here? Yeah, I did. Okay. And then you don't know how to tell when enough oil is added, because that's not clear. That was just something from Car Mechanics Simulator. Wasn't really relevant to the other ones. Is that something that I could just include in the overarching thing of it's not teaching important? Let's see. It's not covering basic things. Yeah, I'll just put it there. Don't know how to tell when enough oil's added. Yeah. And I'm gonna make sure I put which game that is so that I can grab examples of it whenever I write the report or make the video, grab footage from these games. I'll make it easier on myself. probably need to stop once I'm done with these thorns. And then I'll just make a note that that's where we're stopping so that I can get back to work. Don't know when enough oil is added. Inconsistency in interaction. When you're adding the wiper fluid, it automatically stops when the reservoir is full. However, when you're adding the oil, it just keeps flowing and doesn't stop. That was only in our mechanics simulator. And then after a few steps in the tutorial, the tooltips go away when the next step is to open the pie menu. I have to stop and remember which button to push to open the pie menu. Inconsistent UI interactions, yeah. Did anyone else have inconsistent UI interactions? And I'll do another level of thinking when I get to the actual whatever output, is that I may, like you're saying here, inconsistent UI interactions, is I'm going to look at this once I have it all in here and do another level of thinking and categorize stuff again. Hopefully. Hopefully I will remember to do that. And see, are there any other patterns that I'm not seeing in this first run through? You remember wrench quite well? Okay. After this, we're still on Car Mechanics Simulator, but the tooltips went away after a certain point. Got something to follow up on for the other ones. Tooltips go away after a certain point, and you have to remember. So that is a yes here. And it's a yes in first step. I don't know if it's as much of an issue in first steps because of the type of training it is. It's more of an issue here. It's a less complicated training. Oh, I can't spell. I think, but I will always question myself. Is there an ooey gooey column? No, there's not right now. It is. I don't usually I don't usually include that in UX. Is it ugly? So is your ooey gooey ugly or just not intuitive? Is that, so which is your ooey? What's your definition of ooey? It can't reference the full order list, only the next step. So not sure how many steps are completed and how much is left in the order. So how do I solidify my ability to fill an order if I can't see the order? That's not an issue in wrench. I don't remember Rover Mechanic Simulator. So I'm gonna make that a follow-up. Okay. Ability to reference full task list versus just next step. And so that will be a no. And this is a yes, but I don't remember Rover Mechanic and Wrench. These are going to be the same because it's the same game. Okay. When the next step is out of the field of view, sometimes a little harder to figure out where to go. Is that an issue with the other ones? I don't remember, so that would have to be a follow-up. So maybe you'll just use the ooey gooey for your own entertainment? Okay. Because it can be an ugly UI and still be intuitive. So that's why I don't always go off of that, because that's not really an UX issue as much as it is a visual aesthetic issue. But that does still matter. Because I think people are drawn to things that look better. So even if something is easy to use, they may not be drawn to use it just because it's ugly. Right. I've done that. I've gone to a web page and then immediately left because it was ugly. And I didn't even look at the content. Yeah, it is. It's a balance act. Easy way of finding next step if out of field of view. That is a no for this one. I don't know about the rest. I'll have to check. So that is it for Thorns. So we will stop there for today, and then I'm gonna make a note. We stopped at Carmack. So, okay, pick up at Carmack Buds. That's where we'll start next week, is the Buds from Car Mechanic Simulator. And that will be it for today. Usability comes first for sure. Yeah. Yep, it does. And then we'll just pick this up next week. I will hopefully see y'all next week. Thanks for hanging out. Did y'all have any questions or anything about like this whole process or anything before I go? This is a really useful process for detailed competitive analysis. Yeah, so this is just me doing it. It's not glamorous. It's not fun like when we're actually playing a game, but it is a part of the process. And depending on like what your outcome is, my outcome is of course to educate people on best practices and to teach myself as well. To help like establish, okay, if you're creating training material, this is what you need to know about XR. So that's my goal and my outcome. And again, analysis paralysis is a thing, so you have to balance how much time you spend on doing these things. Yeah, it is what real UX research is like. Yeah, it really is. So yeah, and that's, yeah, you're watching me do actual work, so yeah. But thanks, and y'all have a good week, and I'll see y'all next week. Have a good day. Yeah. It's basically like that, yeah. And that's how I've learned whenever I take a newer UX person under my wing at work, they learn a ton more than that they do at school, because they're learning because I'm working and they're watching me work, and they're I'm telling them, like, I'm giving them guidance, but I'm letting them do the work, but I'm giving them guidance on this is how I would do it, you choose how you would do it. But yeah, so yeah, that's the best way to learn. And so the hard thing is that you don't have that if you don't have that job, which is one of the big challenges that people getting into UX right now, and especially in XR UX right now, is that you don't have that job, so you can't learn that way. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing this stream, is so that, okay, it's not an actual paid job, but you can still watch and learn. That's something. Yeah. So thanks again, and y'all have a good week. I'll see y'all next time.